Imagine finding a manual that claimed death wasn't the end of your journey. It was the most dangerous part of it. It warned that you wouldn't simply drift into the afterlife. You would be questioned, tested, and confronted. And if you weren't ready, you would come back, literally, again and again. That sounds like science fiction. But almost 2,000 years ago, scattered groups of early Christians wrote exactly this. They meant it as instructions. To them, it wasn't myth or philosophy. The manuscripts found at Nag Hammadi, along with texts preserved in the Bruce Codex and the Askew Codex, describe salvation as something far harder than simple belief. They describe how to escape what they saw as a vast cosmic prison, run by rulers called the Archons through fate, forgetfulness, and reincarnation. The premise alone is striking. These writings present themselves as practical guides for helping the soul navigate, break out of, and permanently rise above the material universe. If they're right, the real question isn't whether heaven exists, it's whether you know how to get there. Death, in this view, isn't the end of the journey, it's the test of how well you prepared for it. Requirement 1. Know what you are. So what exactly did these texts tell you to do? Everything that follows depends on this first step. Miss it and nothing else matters. According to the Gnostic writings, humanity's real deception wasn't being told God doesn't exist. It was being convinced we already know what we are. Most people answer that question without thinking. I am a body, a mind, a personality, a history, a name. The Gnostics rejected all of those answers. None of them, they said, is the part of you that has to escape. The Apocryphon of John opens with a striking account of how humans were made, describing the rulers trying to build a person out of matter. Come, let us create a human according to the image of God and according to our likeness. They were unable to make it rise. They said to Yaldabaoth, blow into his face something of your spirit, and his body will arise. He blew into his face the spirit, which is the power of his mother. The body moved and gained strength, and it was luminous. In this account, a human being is a fragment of something higher, living inside flesh. It is more than just flesh. Everything else in the manual builds on that one claim. These traditions describe a person as made of 3 parts: the physical body, the counterfeit spirit, and the divine spark. Only the spark belongs to the world above. Only it can return there. In short, liberation means stripping away the body and the counterfeit spirit piece by piece, until only the pure light remains to return to the monad. That's why the first requirement isn't about becoming something new. It's about separating what is really you from everything attached to you. The texts even sort people by whether this recognition has happened. The Hillic lives entirely through matter. The psychic has a soul, but is still ruled by fate. The pneumatic has woken up to direct knowledge of its divine origin and can carry out the steps needed to return. Nothing else in this manual works until that recognition begins, because every instruction that follows aims at one thing: strengthen what belongs to the pleroma and cut loose from what belongs to the prison. Before moving to the next requirement, there's a question only you can answer. If your body disappeared, would you still exist? Your memories, your beliefs, your name? According to the Gnostics, everything hinges on whether something remains once all of that is gone. Hello, hey, this is Oliver. If you're enjoying the video, please consider giving me a like and a subscribe because it really helps get the video out to more people. Thank you. Requirement 2. Understand your captor. Knowing what you are is only half the preparation. The next question is unavoidable. If the divine spark comes from a higher reality, why doesn't it remember? The Gnostic texts answer that forgetfulness is deliberately maintained. It isn't an accident. The Apocryphon of John blames this on the counterfeit spirit, a force that imitates life while pulling consciousness away from its source. The counterfeit spirit has grown strong in them. It burdens the soul and leads it into evil works and casts it into forgetfulness. So forgetfulness works like a prison. It has nothing to do with a lack of intelligence. A soul can be brilliant, successful, and admired, and still be completely asleep to its own origin. The counterfeit spirit is one of the core obstacles to liberation. It's the main way the rulers keep hold of the soul, binding it through craving, ignorance, habit, and identification with material life. This changes the whole nature of the struggle. The enemy speaks from inside you. It doesn't act from outside. Every attachment that convinces you you're nothing but a body, every desire that deepens your tie to matter, every fear that makes letting go feel impossible, each one is another thread holding the soul in place. The rulers themselves are described the same way. The Apocryphon of John portrays them as powers who govern the material world, each ruling their own domain. Their purpose is to preserve their control over it, not to offer freedom. This is also why the texts stress constant awareness. The prison isn't held together by walls, it's held together by mistaken identity. Every time the divine spark mistakes the prison for itself, the prison wins. It also explains why awakening is called gnosis. That word means recognition, not information. The Gospel of Truth states, ignorance of the Father brought about anguish and terror, and the anguish grew solid like a fog so that no one was able to see. What comes into existence in him is knowledge, which appeared in order that oblivion might vanish and the Father might be known. In these texts, knowledge means remembering who you truly are. It has nothing to do with collecting information. That's why the Gnostics talk about remembrance before they ever talk about ascent. A soul that doesn't remember where it came from can't recognize the way home. Requirement 3. Weaken the counterfeit spirit. Recognizing the prison doesn't free you from it. Knowledge alone isn't enough. The counterfeit spirit has to actually grow weaker, and the divine spark has to grow stronger. Otherwise, when death comes, the same attachments that ruled your life keep ruling your soul. The texts tie bondage to desire, fear, anger, greed, pride, and ignorance. These aren't ordinary moral failings. They're the actual tools the rulers use to keep control. That's why conduct matters so much on the Gnostic path. Every attachment is another chain, whether or not good behavior earns salvation on its own. The Book of Thomas the Contender repeatedly describes desire as something that enslaves rather than satisfies. Woe to you who are gripped by the agencies of your body, for they will afflict you. Whatever can rule the soul already does. The attachment itself is the real problem, and the object of desire is almost beside the point. That applies to greed, vanity, power, pleasure, fear, and resentment alike. Anything that deepens your identification with the material self strengthens the counterfeit spirit along with it. The goal is a state free of passion and inner conflict, where you're no longer ruled from outside by compulsive desire. That's why the Gnostics never separate inner change from liberation. Every moment of awareness weakens forgetfulness. Every attachment released loosens another bond. Every win over compulsion tips the balance from the counterfeit spirit toward the divine spark. The takeaway: preparation for death starts now. We don't wait until the final moments. These writings treat it as a daily practice, because when the rulers examine your soul, they'll find whatever you've spent your life cultivating. Requirement 4. Receive the mysteries before death. Remembering your origin is only the start of the journey. It isn't the finish of the preparation. The Gnostic texts keep pointing to something more. Mysteries, seals, anointings, baptisms, and the bridal chamber. These weren't symbolic ceremonies performed for a community. They were preparation for what happens after death. The Gospel of Philip states this plainly. Those who say they will die first and then rise are mistaken. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, when they die they will receive nothing. The instruction is clear. Everything needed for liberation has to begin before death. Death reveals the soul's condition. It doesn't create it. The rites vary across the texts. Some describe baptisms, others anointings, others sacred names, seals, garments of light, or hidden mysteries given only to those judged ready. Despite the differences, they all aim at the same goal: preparing the soul to be recognized beyond the material world. One rite stands out: the bridal chamber. The Gospel of Philip calls it the highest mystery. The text never explains exactly what happened there, and that silence has fueled centuries of debate. Some scholars read it symbolically, others believe it was an actual initiation rite. Whatever its form, its purpose seems consistent, reuniting what had been split apart and restoring the soul to its original wholeness. The same text makes a striking promise. He who receives that light will not be seen, nor can he be detained. This is one of the boldest claims in all the surviving Gnostic writing. The soul escapes by becoming invisible to the rulers. It doesn't need to overpower them. Once complete, the preparation leaves no trace of the prison behind. This is also why these texts guarded their teachings so closely. Anyone could copy down knowledge. Transformation had to actually happen inside a person. The mysteries weren't interesting ideas. They were meant to change the soul's actual condition. Again, death isn't when you start preparing for the exam. Preparation belongs to life. Everything up to now has been preparation. Now it gets tested. The moment the body dies, the ascent begins. It leads into a system, not into heaven. The soul leaves the body like an old garment and rises through a hostile universe guarded by planetary checkpoints, toll collectors, and celestial authorities. The journey is controlled. It is not peaceful. Checkpoint after checkpoint, authority after authority, every gate asks the same question. The first Apocalypse of James describes 3 powerful toll collectors waiting at the first boundary. With one job, stop the ascent, seize the soul, and send it back into the cycle. The first question comes immediately. Who are you, or where are you from? That sounds almost trivial, but everything depends on the answer. If you answer with a name, a job, a nationality, or a life story, you're still answering as someone who belongs to the material world. Here's what you need to say. I am a son, and I am from the Father. Notice what's missing. No biography, no achievements, no memories, only your origin. What sort of son are you, and to what father do you belong? Answer again from identity. I am from the pre-existent Father, and a son in the pre-existent one. The questions get harder from here. The rulers push further, testing whether this knowledge has actually been realized or just memorized. Third question comes. Are you one of ours? You answer. The divine spark passed through your world, but it didn't originate there. Its deepest origin is the pre-existent Father. Finally, they'll ask, where will you go? And you'll answer, to the place from which I have come, there shall I return. Past the checkpoints, the ascent continues, but the questioning isn't over. The Gospel of Mary describes another encounter, a confrontation with desire itself. I didn't see you going down, but now I see you're going up. So why are you lying since you belong to me? That accusation, you belong to me, is the real test. Did desire ever actually own your soul? Or did your soul just wear it like clothing? Answer. I saw you, but you didn't see me or know me. I was to you just a garment, and you didn't recognize me. If desire was only a garment, it could be taken off. Next comes ignorance, which accuses rather than tempts. Where are you going? It says. In wickedness you're bound. Since you're bound, don't judge. Refuse the accusation again. Why do you judge me since I haven't judged? I was bound, even though I haven't bound. They didn't recognize me, but I've recognized that everything will dissolve, both the things of the earth and the things of heaven. In plain terms, ignorance is saying, where do you think you're going? You're still trapped in this world. You have no right to claim you're free. You refuse that identity. Why are you judging me? I may have been trapped once, but I don't belong to that anymore. You never understood who I really was. Now I see that everything in this world, even the heavens above it, is temporary. The rulers accuse. You don't argue back. You simply answer from recognition. The last confrontation is with wrath. Where do you come from, you murderer, and where are you going, conqueror of space? This time the answer shows what all the preparation was for. You respond, what binds me has been killed. What surrounds me has been overcome. My desire is gone, and ignorance has died. From now on, I'll receive the rest in silence. That answer describes someone the rulers can no longer rule. It has nothing to do with defeating them outright. That's the whole strategy. The preparation was about becoming the kind of soul for whom those answers are simply true. It was never about memorizing clever passwords. By the time you reach the powers of wrath, their accusations have nothing left to grab onto. You've passed the interrogations, but the journey isn't over. Beyond the planetary powers in the Gospel of Mary, later Gnostic traditions describe something even more elaborate. The books of Zhu no longer show isolated confrontations. They describe a vast celestial structure where every passage is guarded, every treasury sealed, and every gate demands proof that the soul truly belongs beyond it. The Gospel of Mary ends with the soul passing beyond the powers. Later Gnostic traditions treat that as only the beginning. The interrogations are over, and the ascent continues, but what's ahead isn't an empty heaven. According to the books of Zhu, the soul enters a celestial structure unlike anything seen before. The universe unfolds as an enormous hierarchy, 12 lower aeons giving way to what's called the 60 treasuries of light, each one its own fortified sanctuary, every entrance and exit guarded, every passage watched. Nothing is left unattended. The text describes gates, watchers, veils, and hidden paths. There are no open skies here, no boundless freedom. The closer you get to divine fullness, the more heavily guarded each gate becomes. That can seem backwards. Why would realms of light need guards at all? The texts never answer directly, but within their worldview, these aren't barriers keeping worthy souls out. They're boundaries that separate what still belongs to the created world from what has genuinely woken up to its divine origin. In other words, ascending means becoming recognizable to the source. Every gate is asking the same question in a different form. Does this soul really belong here? That explains everything from earlier. The mysteries, the baptisms, the ethical discipline, the giving up of attachment. None of it was arbitrary ritual. It was preparation for entering a reality where identity itself determines whether you pass. The books of Zhu take this further, describing precise ritual knowledge, sacred names, seals, and tokens carried by the initiate before death. These count as equipment for the ascent. They are not symbolic decoration. Where earlier traditions stress inner change, here the journey starts to look like a detailed instruction manual that continues past death. The soul proceeds instead of wandering. The guardians recognize instead of improvising. Every movement follows a set order, and every level has its own requirements. Every successful passage depends on preparation that could only happen while alive. This is where one of the biggest differences between Gnostic traditions shows up. The Gospel of Mary focuses on the soul's freedom from desire, ignorance, and wrath. The books of Zhu assume that freedom is already won and ask a different question instead. Once the soul has remembered what it is, how does it prove that to the guardians of light? Their answer is startling. Knowledge alone is no longer enough. Recognition has to come with the mysteries themselves. The ascent enters its most technical phase, where the soul passes through gates that test identity through what it carries: seals, sacred names, spoken formulas, tokens prepared for this exact moment. What it has become matters too, but the tokens matter just as much. If you've reached this point, the interrogations are behind you, and desire, ignorance, and wrath no longer hold any power over you. Don't assume the journey is finished. The later Gnostic writings make the ascent even more exact. Ahead lie the treasuries of light, each one guarded, with 3 watchers at every entrance and 3 more at every exit, veils hiding the higher realms and every passage protected. The books of Zhu present these as strict checkpoints. They are nothing like open pathways. Don't expect the guardians to recognize you simply for showing up. According to these texts, the preparation must already be finished while you're alive, because nothing essential can be gained now. If you didn't receive the mysteries before death, the journey doesn't pause so you can learn them. The Gospel of Philip puts it bluntly: if anyone does not receive it while he is here, he will not be able to receive it in the other place. That's why these traditions insist the work starts long before the ascent. Receive the mysteries, receive the baptisms, weaken the counterfeit spirit, shed attachment, all while you're still alive. Death is the exam, it is not the study session. Approaching the higher gates, the text describes several kinds of recognition. The Apocryphon of John speaks of the 5 seals, rites that protect the divine spark from the counterfeit spirit and the powers of fate. The Gospel of Philip presents the bridal chamber as the decisive mystery, one that transforms the soul so completely the Archons can no longer hold it. He who will receive that light will not be seen, nor can he be detained. According to these writings, the highest gates check whether you already belong. Whether you simply wish to return doesn't enter into it if you fail. Everything so far assumes the ascent succeeds. The Gnostic writings also ask what happens if it doesn't, and their answer is immediate. Don't expect a second try at the gates. Don't expect the journey to simply restart where it left off. Failure has consequences. The details differ between traditions, but the outcome is the same. The soul stays within the created order instead of reaching the pleroma. The earliest traditions describe this as forgetfulness. If the counterfeit spirit still clings to the soul, if ignorance hasn't been overcome, if the divine origin hasn't been remembered, the ascent ends where it began. The soul is seized, sent back into forgetfulness, and placed once more into the prison of flesh. The Apocryphon of John says it plainly. Those who fail to gain true knowledge are hurled down into forgetfulness and thrown into prison. That prison, the text explains, is another body, another life, another turn of the cycle. Calling it merely a punishment undersells it. Only those who break free of forgetfulness avoid being thrust into flesh again. Other texts describe a different risk. If the necessary mysteries weren't received before death, the Gospel of Philip warns the soul may never reach the higher realms at all. Instead, it wanders in a region the text calls the middle place, caught between full freedom and total entrapment. The Pistis Sophia describes a region called the outer darkness, presented as a real place of confinement. This is no metaphor. Its image is unforgettable. A colossal dragon, tail held in its own mouth, forming a perfect circle nothing can enter or leave. Inside its body lie 12 regions of judgment, each guarded by rulers with the faces of cats, dogs, vultures, basilisks, dragons, and other creatures. These are wardens over souls that, according to the text, remain bound by ignorance or serious wrongdoing. Whether this vision was meant literally, symbolically, or ritually is still debated. But its warning is clear. The real danger was staying trapped inside the cosmos after death. Physical death itself was almost beside the point. Even here, the story isn't finished. The Pistis Sophia preserves one last possibility, a liturgical rescue in which the living pray and perform sacred rites, and the receivers of Melchizedek are said to seize any soul still trapped in the regions of judgment and carry it away from the powers holding it. The details are extraordinary, but the instruction underneath them is consistent. Don't assume escape is automatic. Prepare before death. Remember your origin. Receive the mysteries. Loosen every attachment binding you to the world below. According to these writings, death was never the finish line. It was the exam, and everything in life was preparation for that single moment. That is the escape manual, pieced together from scattered manuscripts copied across centuries rather than written by one author. Some describe planetary rulers. Others speak of desire, ignorance, and wrath. Some preserve baptisms, mysteries, and sacred names. Others preserve interrogations at the gates of heaven. No single Gnostic community left behind one handbook containing all of it. What survives are fragments. Different traditions, different emphases, different maps of the same journey. Yet across all those differences, one pattern keeps appearing. Human beings are asleep. The material world isn't what it seems, and something within us has forgotten where it came from. Life is a chance to remember. Death doesn't end that process.